you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love? Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. And now here's your host, Rich Barris.
Welcome to Inside the Numbers, indeed, with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. All right, let's go over Georgia. And there's a bunch of stuff I want to get to today, but I want to talk about Georgia. I want to talk about leadership drama with the Republican Party. And let's rewind 6 months, all right? Let's rewind to even more, you could, 8 months roughly. And we talked about this identity crisis that Republicans were in the post-Trump era. All right. And there was going to be this fight between MAGA and between the establishment, who really just want things to return back to normal the way they were before Donald Trump. They don't mind managing the decline as long as they're the ones who are in power and benefiting from it. And in 2016, Republican voters kind of like declared their, even before the 6-8 month one, declared their independence from the media and declared their independence from Fox News and said, no, you know what? This time you can't pick our nominee. This time we're sick of losing with John McCain. We're sick of losing with Mitt Romney, right? We're sick of this. You told us not to pick Rick Santorum. You told us not to pick Mike Huckabee, right? Some more populists. Notice the populist undertones that have been like riding underneath the Republican Party for years. And then eventually the voters had enough and they said, you know what? Fox and Friends, Chris Wallace, Brett Baier, they can take their picks and stick them right up there. You know what? We're going to pick who we want, despite the polls showing that they are the worst candidate to possibly, beat Hillary Clinton. All right. So here we are now, all these years later. And I've been wondering whether or not just Americans in general, but whether Republicans knew that what they were getting themselves into, right? And some of them, obviously, the base is still behind Trump and Republican, I would say lowercase Republicanism, when the rest of the party now is trying to say, see, we told you so, let's go back. All right, here's the problem with the discussion that's been going on before we even get into Georgia, is that really most people don't know the entire story, right? And it's real easy to go back and say, well, if we would have nominated Gary Black in Georgia, we wouldn't even have been to a runoff. That's a hypothetical that you have no way to. So how do you know that your alternative candidates wouldn't have been the subject of the sabotage that was real and did happen? The only way they would not have been is if they would have sold out, right? So you look at a candidate like Blake Masters, for instance, perfect example, versus Herschel Walker. This is the choice you had without Trump on the ticket. Here's the problem for Republicans moving forward. Without Trump on the ticket, they are having a very, very difficult time getting a certain voter to vote. And we're going to look at Georgia in a little bit, and you're going to see it clear as day. All right. They're missing, if you look back just at the November map and compare it to this map, it's very close after all the votes were counted, very close to in between Purdue and Loeffler's loss in the runoff on January 5th, 2021. Some of them are some of it's really identical. It's just that Walker performed better in rurals and even in counties that he wound up losing that he flipped in November. He still performed better than Loeffler performed in counties like Washington, right? And we'll look at a bunch of them. But my point is, Walker had a choice, and his choice was take the McConnell team and get some money. All right. That's what he did. Even before the primary came, and it was clear with some of these issues that were going, he was getting beaten up You know why Walker was silent during the summer, right? When he was getting hit with all these smear campaigns and everything. That was the Republican establishment's strategy. And the candidates who were signed on to the Republican strategy, the establishment strategy, didn't respond. The John Gibbses, right? They didn't have an argument. They were told basically to not talk about abortion and don't respond to those lines of attacks, and just move forward and talk about inflation, talk about Biden, right? And that's about it. For a while, they were going to hide Walker when he had a polling lead. They were going to hide him until those attacks came. And then they reacted. They were not proactive. They were reactive. And that is textbook establishment. And throughout the summer, the negatives for some of these candidates, especially those who took that money, were just driven up without any answering whatsoever. Then you have Blake Masters on the other side, right? Who also got his negatives run up, but for different reasons. So Blake Masters did not take the DC consulting class. He did not beg Mitch McConnell for his money. And in return, he didn't get it. He got sabotaged and was really reliant on Peter Thiel to fund his campaign and part of Donald Trump's PAC to give him money. All right. So there really is no good choice if you're, and without the voters understanding that, they're just simply presenting this like bad candidate quality argument. It's very generic and it doesn't tell everybody what really happened behind the scene. John Gibbs beat the most well-known incumbent in the country with a certain team and certain people behind him. The minute he won the primary, in order to play ball, he had to get rid of them all right, including me. And it's, look, no hard feelings, but the fact of the matter is that's what happens. And Russ, I'm so glad I saw that comment in the corner of my eye. I want you all to ask yourselves, if you're Republicans, all right, which one would you rather be? Which person would you rather be? Who do you want to be? Are you too young to remember what it was like before the era of Trump and MAGA? You don't remember what they did to you? Did you expect that this was going to be easy? That they were going to let the boat, they were just going to let it sail nicely into the sunset? No. They were going to stir up the waves. They were going to cut the anchors off that SOB. They were going to slice holes in your sails, rock the hell out of that boat, and then poke you as you're throwing up over the side. That's how this was always going to be. And I got to be honest with you. I hear a lot of quit. I do. I hear a lot of quit. I've been hearing a lot of quit for a while. And the truth is, I think some of these Republicans want an excuse to be able to throw their hands in the air and stop fighting. I just think we ought to be a little bit honest about it. Trump could do it in 2016 without money because he didn't need them. He had universal name recognition and a personal fortune to be able to spend. Yet he still did not spend money like a traditional presidential candidate. He just didn't win like that. Jeb Bush spent thousands of dollars for every caucus vote he got in Iowa. Donald Trump barely even competed. Against Hillary Clinton, she raised money hand over fist, 3.5 to 1 from Wall Street over Donald Trump. Joe Biden, 6 to 1. Wall Street backed them over Donald Trump. I think Trump lost some of his magic from 2020, from 2016. And honestly, I would lay that at the foot of him trying to be nicey nice with the Republican establishment. And some of those consultants came in and, he should have known when it didn't work with Reince Priebus and some that, you just can't put these coalitions together. You can't do it. So what happens to Walker? And let's look at this map. Looking, and I'll just say the numbers. We have to just show one map at a time here, but just looking at this map, I see, and it actually turned out to be a little less than 100,000 votes because, again, that's why I was trying to tell people last night, you really just don't know how much is left in Fulton and DeKalb It's a you-know-what show, guys. I mean, you don't know what they have. They're not going to tell you. Even people like me, we unfortunately just don't have elections the way we used to have them anymore. 2020 and COVID and universal mail changed, and drop boxes changed the name of the game. It used to be when people like myself, I would tell Laura, call the Milwaukee official, the contact that we have, and that official would say, this is how many mail-in ballots came in today. This is what we have left. Election day vote is counted up to this point. We have this much left. That's not the case anymore, especially in these centralized voting centers. Maricopa County, Atlanta, Georgia, Philadelphia. In these vote centers, they're centralized. They just basically, it's the Wild West out there. It is the Wild West. I took that screenshot last night. Look at what everyone's talking about this morning. Well, exactly. That's why I took that screenshot. I knew it was going to be a conversation piece today. Now, they'll just tell you that it was an error, they revised it, it was an accident, and they fixed it. You don't know. We don't know. Because the truth is, elections are just not run as tight as they used to be run. And there have always been problems in elections, and nobody's perfect. But we're at a point now where it's just like the Wild West. You have no way of knowing. The cameras go out in Washoe, and there's a dump that doesn't match the rest of the trend, whatever. We don't know. There's no way to get to the bottom of that. If you want to blame someone for what is going on in a state like Georgia, and it's candidate quality crap, let's get back to what this is really about. Why are Republicans able to hold on in the state of North Carolina, in the states of Florida, and the states of Texas, but they cannot hold on in states like Georgia and Arizona at this point? They're having a difficult time doing it. Nevada is another great example. Even though, by the way, the Trump-aligned candidate got the closest to carrying the state. One Trump candidate won, and the other one, by the way, won for the first time in 8 years in that state for any Republican. And the other one lost by a half a point. Barely. When the Rhino candidates got blown out by 5 points or more. And Trump, by the way, both times almost came very, very close to carrying the silver state. I'm going to tell you what it is. We've talked about this before. You want someone to blame? It's the Republican establishment who did this. Economics is politics. Why are they holding on in states like North Carolina, but not states like Georgia? In states like Florida, but not states like Nevada? In states like Texas, but not states like Arizona? Georgia is now more than 60% urban because Republicans invited Tinseltown into Atlanta. They invited professional class jobs and services into Atlanta. They opened up industry that is left-leaning industry. They did it, why? For bribes. Because they're crooked. Because they want to be able to say that they got the unemployment rate fell. They don't care what was driving that unemployment rate. They just want revenue in their own pockets and in the pockets of their states. Very different in Florida. Republican governors for years have known that they have a tourism agency that's working class, and then the rest of that they have basically reserved for traditional Florida, field and stream, goods producing. Green Republicanism. Texas, they don't want the services sector to overtake their energy sector. North Carolina, the research triangle, that's it. Why do you think Governor Roy Cooper invited Apple in there? Like Doug Ducey, the stupid half-brain nitwit that he is, invited companies like Nike and Pfizer. North Carolina is only 40% urban. Florida isn't urban at all. In Texas, there are large growing metro areas, but you still have a big red area like you do in Florida, like you do in North Carolina. Economics drives politics. Why would Trump want to build up Generac in North Carolina and not entice Apple to build a plant there? While Democratic Governor Roy Cooper wants Wake County to to roll out the red carpet for Tim Cook. Because they know that The truth is, it is the Republican establishment, the Barber families, the Kemp families, the Perdues, the Ryans, the McConnells. They view that Chamber of Commerce brand of republicanism as good for themselves, good for their own families, good for their personal ambitions and their family fortunes. They don't give a damn what it's going to do to Georgia 10 years from now. It was Republicans who opened the door in Reno to Democratic constituencies, and they lost their last stronghold outside of Clark County. It was Republicans who opened the door to services, to big pharma, to liberal industry up and down in the Phoenix area, and they didn't give a damn what it would do to the Phoenix area 10 years from now. The McCains. The truth is, they were getting their asses kicked long before Trump ever came along in these states. Do we have to rewind and talk about how razor thin Florida was since the Bush family destroyed the economy? Mitt Romney lost Florida by 67,000 votes. John McCain got crushed in the Sunshine State. Crushed. It wasn't until Trump came along that they were able to win it at the state and presidential level. Yes, they had governors, but they had governors in Florida because 2010 versus Rick Scott versus Alex Sink was not a high turnout election. It was a very low turnout election, and Republicans turned out at a higher rate than Democrats, and that's how Rick Scott became the governor of Florida. Charlie Crist left, with many people disliking him at that point. He was at one point a very, very popular Republican governor, but that's because he thought that it was cool and politically expedient to be a Republican at that time. Once Obama won it, he licked his crusty finger, he put it in the air, his crispy finger, he put it in the air to see which way the wind was blowing, and he thought, oh my God, Hispanics have made this state blue forever, I better become a Democrat. Fast forward, Rick Scott beats him, beats Alex Sink. Again, low turnout. It was only until 2018 that there was a decent size turnout in Florida in a midterm election, and that was because of Donald Trump. Florida Republicans loved Donald Trump, and they came out to defend him because they knew that if Bill Nelson was reelected, he would vote to impeach Donald Trump. So while they got killed everywhere, an army of Republicans elected Rick Scott and defeated third-term incumbent Bill Nelson for the U.S. Senate. It barely got Ron DeSantis over the finish line, but nevertheless, it did. Now, fast forward 4 years, look at Ron DeSantis. He went from winning by 30,000 votes to winning by 19 points. Economics is politics. Migration is politics. They know that. Georgia was not supposed to be this close. They gave up on Herschel Walker, even though he sold out. Let's be real. Let's have real talk. He sold out. He did. And yet, they didn't shower him with so much money that he was able to compete. You know how much Walker was outspent in the, here, I just actually had the figures a second ago. Give me 1 second and I'll give you the total numbers. It's stunning. It is stunning. Okay, here we go. All right, Herschel Walker in the both rounds combined. All right, on behalf of Herschel Walker and entities on behalf of Herschel Walker spent, and it sounds like an enormous amount of money. Almost 150 million. 149 and change. For Warnock, 250 million. Just under 248. For an advantage for Warnock of almost $100 million. So while he got a lot of money for it, was it enough? And how much of that, by the way, was front-loaded toward the first race? Most of it, the vast majority of it. They abandoned him. I got to tell you, before yesterday, going into this, everybody was mocking Herschel Walker behind his back. Republicans were like joking about how much he was going to lose by. And I'm talking about Republican leaders, statewide and nationally. You just don't hear this side of the story. They totally gave up on him. And yet, he's still made it this close. 3 days of early voting in a deficit, and he still got this close. It's easy to blame everyone. It's easy to blame somebody if you're Republican leaders right now, because the last thing you want Republican voters to do is to think back the way it was again. And the last thing they want you to hear is the entire story. How well did Kelly Loeffler do? A Republican establishment handpicked by Brian Kemp. Right. David Perdue, the whole Perdue family and Mitch McConnell thought that it was Trump's fault that David Perdue did not hit 50% in November of 2020. They wanted no help from Trump or the base. They thought they were going to sail to re-election without Trump on the ballot on January 5th. They really did. Robert Barnes has told you these stories with all of these, the Perdue family and the team McConnell. They have told you about these, told you the story over and over and over again. How did they do? Trump's such a drag. Why? Except for Brian Kemp. Is he the closest Republican in 4 cycles in these states? Everywhere, not just myself, but other pollsters polled, Donald Trump ran significantly ahead of these Republican candidates. Up and down the ballot, up and down. Congress, Senate, governors, up and down the ballot. I look at this and I compare it to November 8th. Walker's missing about 200,000 votes. Warnock's only missing about 130,000 votes. Meaning it would have been a deadlock, dead even race if they even got their base to the polls the way they did in November 8th equally. Forget about how independents were going. Forget about that. They didn't. The fact is, what you're looking at right now is every county that we went over last night when the early vote came in, I made a comment like, this is the margin with the first early vote dump, and Warnock is significantly outpacing his early vote margin on November 8th. It was the difference between the RNC telling them not to early vote, don't make any effort, we can't explain it to the judge, let's bury our head in the sands and hope a judge saves us for 3 days. That's why Warnock was doing better in that early vote than he had done on November 8th. Republicans picked up the pace toward the end, but it was not enough. It was not enough. The Republican Party in Georgia was actively sabotaging this man. Their regime was actively sabotaging him, and yet he still came this close. It's astonishing. He did it on the back of him being Herschel Walker, the Heisman Trophy winner, basically a folk hero. That's how this race was even this close. The turnout is not unbeatable. What I'm seeing here with the Democratic vote, 1.8 million. Are you kidding me? Where's the rest of the vote in Bentley? Where's the rest of the vote in Washington? Where's the rest of the vote in Burke? Where's the rest of the vote in Ware? It's easy to blame Trump and Trump candidates and candidate quality so they don't have to explain to you how they sabotage these people. So they don't have to explain to you why their people got their butts kicked too. No, it's Trump, it's MAGA, it drags us all down. It's a phony debate is what I'm trying to tell you. It's a phony debate. And you're being duped. A lot of you are being duped. And you're headed right back to Mitt Romney. That's where you're going. And you're going to get creamed with him. So, there you go. Yeah, they did pick up the pace auto later. Republicans did pick up the early voting pace late. But, I mean, when you're over 200,000 votes in the hole before your voters even start voting, that's what Walker was in the hole with. 200,000 votes. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable that they made the same mistake again because it's simply easier to blame Donald Trump. Here's the deal. From New York 19 to New York 21 to Georgia's first round, Georgia's second round, Republicans have a serious problem. How are they going to get these voters to the... Look, after the 2020 election, I did a lot of speaking. And every airport I went to, I met people who just were not voters. They're not high propensity voters. They voted during the era of Trump. And all over the country, people would come up to Laura and I, and they would be like, oh, yeah, I'm not voting anymore. And I remember in the back of my mind saying, if this is true, then Republicans are in real deep, deep, deep trouble. It's true. It's happening. And by the way, let's fast forward some of these, let's rewind with some of these governors. Youngkin got help from the RGA, even though he turned out, I think he's governing. And when I say somebody's a great governor, I mean that they're being the governor that they ran to be. I may not even agree with what they're doing. That's not what I'm saying. Glenn Youngkin ran on a certain set of agenda items, goals, principles. He is governing according to what he told the voters of Virginia he would do when he was campaigning. So by that measure, Glenn Youngkin is a great governor, but he did not sell out. He got some help from the RGA, who only focused on him because they thought he would be a team player, by the way, and he completely duped them. You got to kind of applaud him a little bit. He thought they would, maybe he'll end up being the country club or Republican, but he is not. All right. He has not sacrificed or abandoned his coalition, the people who have voted for him. Yeah, I always see Bill Kristol bitch on Twitter all the time about how Glenn Youngkin's doing this. He's just like Trump after all. And I look at what he's complaining about, and it's something Glenn Youngkin absolutely said he was going to do as governor. So I don't understand what you're complaining about. He said, and he won. He said he would do this. He did it. Or he won, and then he did it. So I don't know what you're complaining about. He's ending up like Trump after all. He ran on this. The voters of Virginia chose him under a pretty decent turnout, by the way. It's not like we were missing a whole lot of Democratic voters. What happened is that Youngkin won the Biden independent voter by 15 points. That's how he won. He's changed minds. They swung to him. But they abandoned Citarelli in New Jersey. They absolutely did. The man almost won the state of New Jersey, basically, and for those who know New Jersey, you know what I mean when I say this, basically driving up and down Route 9, shaking hands at diners. The RGA decided they weren't going to support Tim Michaels. They just completely abandoned Doug Mastriano. It has nothing. I was listening. I don't know how it even happened in the car because I hate most talk radio, to be honest with you. Or at least there's just like the old conservative talk radio wing that I just can't stand. I hear Sean Hannity going on and on and on about how Mastriano lost by a bigger margin than Oz because there was no exceptions for rape and incest and abortion. That is the Mitt Romney way of thinking. That is the Mitt Romney Republican coming out of Sean Hannity, which has always been there, by the way. Do we have to remember the Iraq War era? Do we have to go back and find clips of Sean fighting with Alan Combs? Alan was a great guy, by the way. He really was. You may not like his views that he held, but he was a nice man. He was a decent dude. All my interactions with him were extremely positive. I found him to be an earnest, genuine person. And God rest him. I I liked Allen a lot. Do we have to go back and look at the video clips of him fighting with Allen over the Iraq War and being a neocon just out in the open? The fact is, Oz had money. He didn't have as much as he needed, but he had money. Doug Mastriano had no money. None. As a pollster, you could see it clear as day. The two major media markets is where Doug Mastriano suffered. He didn't have any money, and he got carpet bombed by Josh Shapiro and allies. It did not have anything to do with whether, I mean, I'm sure there are some voters who voted on that, but they would only have voted on that and have been convinced because they didn't hear Doug Mastriano's side of the story. That's because Doug Ducey is just a figurehead. He's not really in charge of the RGA. The Rickett family is in charge of the RGA. Doug Ducey isn't the one who took the meeting with Doug Mastriano and sat down and decided whether or not they would support him or not. It was little boy Rickett. Ducey wasn't anywhere to be seen because he's not a decision maker. He's just a figurehead. And these people desperately want to box Trump out of the Electoral College in 2024. If they cannot stop him in the primary, they are trying to learn the lessons that they did not learn in 15 and 16. And they're looking beyond the primary. And the fact of the matter is they would much rather give Joe Biden a second term or another Democratic nominee a first term than let Donald Trump have another second non-consecutive term in the White House. That is the truth. And you all better start to reconcile that with whatever views you think you have. You better reconcile that real quick because they much rather give it away to a Dem than they would give it back to Donald Trump. That's why they're willing to do what they did in Maricopa. They're willing to take that risk, absolutely. Because if they can't stop him in the Midwest, they need to deny him in Georgia or Arizona. Because if he puts them up on the board and gets Wisconsin, he can go without the Keystone State. Believe me, they are thinking of all of this. And when they decide to Doug Mastriano you, we should actually make Mastriano a verb. It should no longer be a noun. You got Mastriano'd, okay? If they decide to Mastriano you, the spigots are turned off. I don't know if David's in here right now. I wish he was if he's not. When they decide to Mastriano you, this is why Robert and I have been talking about crowdfunding as candidates. Harnessing the power in a different way, the same way that other entities and agencies, non-political actors harness the power of this stuff. It is so much different than just simply Bernie Sanders-like fundraising or Trump-like fundraising. You don't have the name behind that really it's a goal, a mission. It's not, if you don't have the name behind that goal or mission, which in this case is to fund a campaign to the extent that you could compete. If you don't have that name, like Bernie Sanders has that name, like Donald Trump has that name, you have to go about it a different way. You cannot go to like, your own thing on Anecdote or however you say that and raise money and just hope that enough shares on Twitter are going to do it. It's not good enough. A lot of candidates have found that out the hard way at this point. Your only other option is to go to Win Red to participate in the scam. Because the big donors are not going to fund you. They will not. You have been labeled excommunicado. And that's it. In David's race, the truth is, Republican leaders told the big donors in that area, you might as well just fund the Democrat. He's a moderate. They literally told them that that Democratic candidate was going to get 30% of the Republican vote in November. He lost. He lost a seat they didn't even know they could win. They're not very smart people, but they are ruthless people. And I'm telling you, the fact of the matter is, a lot of you are being duped. You're being duped because you don't have all the information. And you're tired. And it's understandable. It's understandable. But like I put up before, when it really comes down to it, it's what Russ said. Which person would you rather be? If you're going to lose anyway, how would you rather lose? These hypotheticals in there, Alex, that's such a great point. These hypotheticals, so-and-so would have won. Oz was a Trump candidate. He lost. Oz did worse with independents, and Barnes brought this up before. Oz did worse with independents than some of the other ones. And the idea behind Oz was that he would actually do better with independents. Even McConnell thought that. Team McConnell thought that. Laxalt did much better. So did Masters, for that matter, and Walker with independents than Oz did. The truth is, that's a whole different issue. They got steamrolled with vote by mail. They were playing a totally different game. Democrats changed who the independent was who was voting as an independent. That's what happened. It's easier to look at these things in much more simplified terms and to blame someone than it is to look at the hard, complicated math, the hard, complicated landscape, and to sometimes be forced to look in the mirror and say, I bear this, certainly some of this responsibility. No pollster from the left or the right, folks, let's remember going into this thing. 21-point lead in the battleground county, in the battleground districts. Remember that? ABC, Washington Post. We were not the only ones to see it. This was the biggest opportunity for any out-of-power, non-incumbent party in a generation. And they blew it because they were playing these games. Because the Republican Party, going back to where I started this, is in an identity crisis. They are in an identity crisis. You have a base that is much more populist in nature, and this like Con-E. We should just call them Con-E. And it is a con of the highest order, but conservative E, right? They're not even what they purport to be anymore. They have some power, and they're desperately, desperately trying to hold on to this. They don't care if this is a managed decline. They just want it to go back to the way things were because, truth be told, they really weren't making the money they were making under Donald Trump. Even when Republicans had the White House, the Senate, and the House. Those 2 years were the worst 2 years of their lives. What are you talking about? Former whatever cannot become lobbyists. Damn! What do you mean I don't automatically get this account for these advertising campaigns? Damn! What do you mean I'm not automatically the pollster for these people anymore? Damn! And Fox News, what do you mean we don't get the ad revenue for the debates anymore? Damn! Looks like I'm going to have to go ask Pfizer to fill that hole. And guess who was against right? Who was skeptical to Pfizer? That's right. He's got to go. So, we're going to have to take a little break here, but I just want people to realize that this stuff is much, much more complicated than it should have been. And I don't know when we come back, we're going to talk about this leadership stuff because I don't know what is more anti-small R Republicanism than rewarding failure. I don't know what is more small R Republicanism than meritocracies. This is not what we're seeing here in the case of leadership in any stretch of the imagination. From the Senate to the House to the RNC. All right. Let's do a quick word from our sponsors. As always, we very, very much appreciate everyone who supports the show. If you haven't done what Laura and I have done from our family, I'm going to go ahead and read it now. I'm also going to get a little bit more light in here because it certainly does feel like it's very dark. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I've just been up too long. But if blasting the light on me helps, then so be it. I'm not going to lie to you. It's not a pretty outlook for the economy. We are in a textbook definition of a recession right now, And Jamie Dimon, just yesterday, in case you didn't see it, made incredible news, basically saying that this is a big problem coming in the next year that could lead to prolonged recessions. All right, so we all know what that means for the food supply, right? And forget about it. Weather, inflation, drought, inflation, and yes, especially now, even new policies continue to push America's food supply near its breaking point. And that's why survival food is more important than ever. Create your own stockpile of the best-selling 4 Patriot survival food kits. It's not ordinary food. We're talking about good for 25-year super survival food that's hand-packed right in a family-owned facility in the US of A. The kits are compact, they're sturdy, water-resistant, light-resistant, stack easily. They have different delicious lunches, breakfasts, dinners, and you can make them in less than 20 minutes. Just add boiling water, simmer, and serve. Go to 4patriots.com/TPP to get your 3-month survival kit, and you'll get their famous guarantee for an entire year after your order, plus 10 free gifts, all very usable and valuable, is really what I should say. They're called 4 Patriots because a portion of every sale is donated to charities who support our veterans and their families. Just go to 4patriots.com/TPP to get your 3-month survival kit and build your own stockpile today. I also have to tell you that if you're browsing their website, you'll most definitely want to use the promo code TPP10. That's TPP10 if you're purchasing any of their other great products outside of the 3-month survival kit, and you will get 10% off as one of our viewers on your site-wide purchase. All right. Speaking of which, after this, just remind me something I want to bring up. The Laura, you're there, right? Remind me about, maybe somebody has a suggestion about what we were talking about yesterday with I don't know about you guys, but every Christmas I reflect on whether or not I think I'm doing enough to give back. We do what we do, and we kind of have things that are, our go-tos. But this, I don't know what it is. I don't know why. Maybe I'm having a freaking midlife crisis or something, but I feel like this Christmas I'm reflecting and I'm just not feeling like I'm doing enough. Or maybe the better things get for me, I feel like I need to increase what I give back. You know what? Before we talk about the next thing, what's really, as you all know, most of you all know, what's really near and dear to my heart is the issue of addiction, or the problem of addiction. So if you guys know of any, we already do some stuff. I know I've done some stuff for veteran addiction groups, but individually. If anybody has any suggestions, I mean, what good is this if you're not going to do something good with it? That's really what I've been thinking lately, folks. Like, what good is this? Like, I'm happy for my success, I guess you would call it, or increased profile. But what good is it if you're not going to use it for anything good other than the benefit of yourself? And I listened to, and no offense, I understand the Hunter Biden story. I get it. It's not about addiction because the media wants to make it about addiction so they can cover for the actual story. But there are people who do stupid stuff. By the way, I was just talking about a certain talk show host who comes at this wrong. And it's like every family in this country has grappled with addiction in their family at one point or another. It could be themselves. It could be their fathers, their mothers, their sisters, their children, right? So that's just one area where I feel like I'm not doing as much as I think I can, especially given my own experience. And I feel like I could. So if you have any suggestions, I really want to hear from them about them, and we'll check it out, because local stuff. So you always have to start in your own backyard, but I feel like we could be doing more. So if you have any suggestions, please send them along, really. And, I'd like to, I'm open. I'm an open book here. I would like to hear them. All right, Laura, and I'd like you to grab them from the comment section and, send them over to me to review. All right, with that in mind, at the end of the year, there's also something else I do, and that's I look at where my potential, my plans are, whether or not I'm doing enough, and whether or not I'm saving enough, whether or not I'm protecting myself and my family good enough, right? And that's where this comes in. Listen, GOLDCO, I know the company. None of the people that we speak about, I don't know and personally use myself. All right. Everyone that I accept to do this, it's because I am well aware and intimately familiar with them. At the end of the year, people like me, you, I'm sure, we all decide what are we going to do with, before that deadline comes. And looking at it's always a good time to buy precious metals, but in my opinion, it's just which ones are the best to buy at that time. But particularly in times like this, my mind goes to protecting my ability to have sound currency. And so the last time the economy looked like this, the market tanked 50%, the dollar lost 46% of its own value, and the price of oil quadrupled. Yet the U.S. economy collapsed while that happened, and inflation ran through the roof. Gold shot up 1,300%, silver 2,400%. And by the way, I just put between you guys, and I like silver right now. So if history repeats itself, we could see it happen again. And I don't want to miss it, and you can't afford to miss what could be the biggest gold and silver boom of our generation. That's why I want you to visit tpplikesgold.com, because when you do, you'll not only get the chance to protect your retirement savings with gold and or silver, you can get, and I'm serious, depends on what you put in. You could get 10 grand or more in free silver just from taking advantage of this opportunity. And it's a rare opportunity. So don't miss out on it. It's an opportunity to protect your retirement savings. Visit tpplikesgold.com, tpplikesgold.com. And truth be told, that's actually the link, but TPP like silver right now. Right, Laura? TPP like silver right now. So here we go. So let me take a 30-second break, grab some water, and when we come back, we're going to talk about Lee Zeldin's decision, and we're going to explore a little bit about what Lee means when he says what he said. All right, and we'll do that in a hot 30 seconds. Speaking of which, tpplikesgold.com, and I said TPP like silver, GOLDCO like silver. You call them, and people who have done it told me the same thing. It's exactly what happened to me when I called last week, actually, again. That's what they're going to tell you, unless you want to get like platinum or something. Platinum's a good choice right now, too. But I don't want to be giving buy recommendations like friggin' Jim Cramer on CNBC or wherever he is at this point. I should thank Jim Cramer, actually, because years and years ago, when I was still in the financial industry, I got word that Jim Cramer was going to put like this like buyout, and I already loved this one stock, so I had some people who like to play. I was told Jim was going to go on that night and put this buy reco on this stock, and I'm like, get out of here. So I already was telling people I love it, and I did. I loved it. It was a company called Bookham. I'll never forget that. And sure as hell enough, we made the moves. And Jim Cramer goes on CNBC that night. What was it called at the time? Mad Money, I think his show was, or something. And sure as hell enough, there he is. Jim Cramer's like, happy buy, Recco, on Bookham. And I'm like, you're kidding me. The stock went crazy. I got in the next morning. I couldn't take the sell orders fast enough. I'll never forget that. I got there so early because I knew it was going to happen. So thanks, Jim Cramer. You were good for something, at least at one time. All right. That was funny. I'll never forget that. All right. So let's talk about this fight over the GOP chair. And Trump, Ronna Romney McDaniel, all right, was smart enough in 2016 to recognize, especially because she was from Michigan, folks, and you have to remember that, okay? I might as well take this earpiece out. I don't really need it. She was from Michigan, so remember that, okay? And she was smart enough at the time to recognize that Donald Trump was not only the pathway to the White House, and that's what he had the pulse of the electorate, but also that for once they may be able to play in the Rust Belt. So it wasn't just about the old Romney map, the old McCain map, the Bush map, that Trump could change the map. You got to give her credit where credit's due. And the RNC was in a fundraising mess under Reince Priebus. That's just the truth. He had big midterm wins on accident, Reince. He won the presidency on accident. So Ronna was rewarded for her loyalty and her vision in 16 and her recognition that Republicans really did need to catch up on the data game. The problem is that by the time she was catching up by the data game, Ronna was not chair in 16. Reince Priebus was. That's why I just said he won the presidency. All right. But it was an accident. He didn't, but Ronna was the head of the GOP in Michigan at the time. So she was rewarded with Trump's support for being the chair of the RNC after Reince Priebus, when Reince became the White House chief of staff, I think, or something like that. I believe he was the chief of staff. Bannon was the chief strategic advisor or something. Or White House advisor. So anyway, she was, rewarded with that, as Trump does reward people, and understood that Republicans were very much behind on the data game in just period. Obama had built a formidable big data operation, and she wanted a permanent data operation. The problem is the world was already changing. And I can tell you, as somebody who uses left-wing vendors, and I do, I have no shame in acknowledging it. I use left-wing vendors for my own big data operations and for polling. It's better. It has far less database, really call it latency. And people who use Republican tools are always coming to me saying, hey, man, here's my list. It's not a list. It's a UPS label. But here's my list of voters to canvass in the area. It seems to be really off. Can you match this against your database and tell me what could be stale or where we have a latency issue? And it's called deduping. So I would take their data set, upload it to mine, and we have a database that is a voter file database layered over a consumer database layered over a donor database. And without a doubt, these are leftists. The industry is dominated by leftists, and they do it better. Then we got into the era of vote by mail, and they were already lagging, and they built a permanent data operation, but it needed work. But then the game changed again, and she didn't really recognize that the game changed. And yes, they were aggressive in court, but honestly, they failed. They failed to stop Democratic governors, Democratic supervisors of elections, whatever it may be. They failed to stop these people from taking the law into their own hands. And in many cases, they won after the election, but it was already too late. They failed to recognize the difference between what was being proposed before COVID, which we had done, countless videos over. One of our viewers, found a video from like the March before, right? March or May or something, before the election. Me trying to explain to people why this was not typical absentee ballot voting or typical early voting opportunities by mail. What they were discussing was something totally different. All right. Now, they did not recognize it. It became a huge problem. And then after 2020, even though Republicans still had power to exercise and to make changes, Doug Ducey, he failed. In fact, Doug Ducey was the problem with Arizona. They had the power in the Republican legislature to change the law in Arizona. Doug Ducey vetoed a lot of changes. Now, Doug Ducey is the reason we just had the problems that we had in Arizona. Brian Kemp and Brad Raffensperger, or Crappy Burger, I call him, and a weak Republican legislature. They expanded some of the problems that occurred in 2020. The drop boxes, access early voting periods, right? They made it worse in many respects, and they purged voters where were not the voters from that were being identified as ineligible voting records anymore. They purged people who were actually still eligible to vote and were, in fact, likely Trump voters. Many of them were purged. That was a whole other problem you've never even heard about. It was like 85,000 of them. In an election that's decided by 90,000 votes, that is a big deal, isn't it? Right? So, we move forward here, and Ronna just didn't see this stuff happening. Now, Trump is trying to... I don't know if what he's... Well, I shouldn't speak for him. I'm just saying that, he's backing McCarthy in some of these fights. I imagine he's still, kind of just going to back Ronna in a very calm way. And that's just the wrong way to go. It is. As of right now, Harmeet is the only one. Harmeet Dillon is the only one who's willing to take on the challenge of going after Ronna, because most people view it as a foregone conclusion that Ronna McDaniel will be selected as the next chair of the RNC. And you can have a lot to say about that by calling your own reps and telling them, if you're Republican voters, that I, in fact, do not want you to vote for Ronna McDaniel. I want Harmeet Dillon. There is a challenge that you're going to run up against, and I'm going to read the statement from Lee Zeldin. And then, because Lee Zeldin was another one who, and Lee, I got to be honest, you probably should have, struck while the iron was hot, buddy, because right now you're looking like a rock star who got New York within 5 points. You helped out Republican candidates in the state, which is why the House is going to be in Republicans' hands. But Ronna McDaniel's initial instinct was to try to play behind the curve again and limit early vote, even though by judiciary modes, not even by legislative modes. So she was quiet through Georgia. She was quiet through Arizona. She was quiet through all of these fights at the state level in Texas, right? In Florida. They did not get involved. And by the way, neither did Trump, as much as he could have, quite frankly. But they're quiet about that while they're trying to fix these problems in the judiciary. And that is a failure. And Harmeet Dillon, who's a lawyer and has been very aggressive on behalf of the RNC, as a member of the RNC, understands that, yes, while you can use the courts, this should be really done through the legislature. And her first instinct is to harness the power of the base to play the game, or better analogy, to play the hand that has been dealt to them at this moment. Later, change the game of cards. But right now, you have to play the hand you're dealt. And her solution is not to run to a man or a woman or 3 men and women in a black robe. Her solution is to run to the base, the most loyal people in the base, like Scott Pressler, who do the hard work day in and day out. That's her initial instinct. I'm going to get Scott Pressler and we're going to do this together. That's the right way to go. That is the right way to go. But she's the only one at this point who's willing to take on that challenge, because it is widely believed that Ronna McDaniel... Well, let me read Lee Zeldin's comment and then we'll get to it. Okay? I don't follow Lee Zeldin. I thought I would have, since he was a candidate. You know what? Let's read the tweet, and then we're going to read the statement. RNC Chair Ronna McDaniel should not run for a 4th term. I won't be running for RNC Chair at this time, with McDaniel's re-election pre-baked by design. Those are the operative words there we're going to focus on. But that doesn't mean she should even be running again. It's time the GOP elects new leadership. It's time for fresh blood. And let's open this up and let's read this full statement. Today, Congressman Lee Zeldin released the following statement on the race for the Republican National Committee chair. And I would love to get into the Democratic primary stuff as well. Okay, it's very, very, very important. I am grateful for all the messages I've received across the country the past few weeks encouraging me to run for chair of the Republican National Committee. Change is desperately needed, and there are many leaders, myself included, ready and willing to step up to ensure our party retools and transforms as critical elections fast approach, namely the 2024 presidential and congressional races. However, the issue with Chairman McDaniel's reelection appears to already be pre-baked, as if the disappointing results of every election during her tenure including yesterday in Georgia, do not and should not even matter. And we're going to talk about why he's saying that. No matter what, I am committed to doing absolutely everything in my power to help save our country with every ounce of my energy. As for the Republican Party, it must become more successful at fundraising, more efficient with spending. And this is a big deal because Ronna did increase fundraising a lot. But when your benchmark is Reince Priebus, who was running into the ground, it's not exactly a very difficult bar to reach. More efficient with spending is key right there. Sharper with ballot collection and election integrity efforts. Oh, man. Smarter with messaging. More present in Democratic strongholds and more connected to the grassroots. I couldn't agree with Lee Zeldin more if I wrote this statement myself. Do you all remember when Lee Zeldin released that ad on crime and he said on November 8th, on or before November 8th, vote like your life depends on it because it just might. And I said on the show, and I tweeted publicly, they need to change that ad to vote like your life depends on it because it does. And it was like 48 hours later that they released a revised version of that video, that ad. It was running on TV. And they used my suggestion. Do you remember that? Lee Zeldin was listening. He was reacting. He was being smarter with messaging. He was absolutely more present in Democrat strongholds. Look at how he did in Kings and Queens. Look at how he did in Bedford-Stuyvesant. Look at how he did in Staten Island. It's the last Republican bastion, but he did even better. Look at how he did in Dutchess County. Look at how he did in Westchester, in Rochester, in Clinton, in Buffalo. He ran a New York-style statewide campaign and damn near pulled it off. In a D+32 state, he lost it within 5 points. More efficient with spending. The RNC must collaborate more with state and local organizations. Boy, no kidding. Take more risks in changing for the better. And allow fresh blood. Robert Barnes and I have been talking about this for so long. For so long. He went on a rant last night. Somebody showed me the transcript of what he said and then showed the transcript of what I said last night during the pay-per-view YouTube, whatever you want to call it, the members YouTube and on Locals. We did on Locals. And it was almost identical. The country club Republican who's got a woke sister. That's who's running Republican campaigns in the state of Georgia and elsewhere. That's who fills the ranks of the RNC in their consultant Rolodexes. Must allow fresh blood and new leadership to rise through its ranks. The Republican Party must more heavily lean into candidate recruitment, campaign management, volunteer engagement, and voter registration. No, they just rely on the base to do it, and then they all over them when they have need of someone to blame. Do you know how much work Scott Pressler did in the state of Pennsylvania to be able to help? I mean, he did his part. Help deliver Pennsylvania for Donald Trump. You know how much work that kid did at the time? He was a kid. He worked himself sick. He's still working despite having his challenges. We must do a far better job communicating not just what we are against related to the terrible policies of Joe Biden and the Democratic Party, but specifically what we are for as Republicans. Oh my God. Let me put that in layman's terms for everybody. They need to be more proactive and not as reactive, which is what Harmeet Dillon said on Tucker. The way to earn votes from Democrat and independent voters is not by acting like Democrats, but by being proud Republicans articulating why we stand for the positions we are most passionate about. This is how to create a movement. It is the Republican Party that has the many ideas our nation needs right now to deliver safer streets, upward economic mobility, better schools, the preservation of freedom and liberty, and so much more. The Republican Party needs to be all in to do everything in its power to save America. Let me put aside all the Republican talking points and let me just say why what he's saying is so important. From a public opinion point of view, as somebody who literally studies persuasion and psephology, it's human nature, folks. Nobody wants to follow a coward. Nobody wants to follow a leader, so-called leader, who isn't leading at all, who is being reactive instead of proactive, who is so timid about putting forward their arguments. They're afraid of their own shadow. They're afraid of every time they may say something that they believe in and their voting base believes in, that the media may beat them up for it. It's pathetic. This is why Scott Walker was able to win so many Obama voters in the state of Wisconsin. By the way, when he was first elected governor and then surviving the recalls and almost winning a historic, essentially fourth election in a row against all odds because it was a very, very Democratic year, he lost by less than Tim Michels lost by. Because people sometimes just want to know who you are and what you stand for. And even if they don't agree with you all the time, they know they can count on you to be you. It's human nature. And they want to follow somebody that they view as rock solid and principled. You know, it's amazing that the Eric Ericksons of the world and the Ben Shapiros of the world, they just can't understand why Trump's voters won't let go of him. Because Trump didn't screw them. Because no matter how many flaws he had, and believe me, there are many, they could always count on him to listen. There could be red flag laws. Well, not if you hit his Twitter account up and say, no, as the base, we don't want these laws. Enormous pressure not to move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, but he promised to do it. I could go on and on. Anwar, VA reform against enormous pressure. Roe v. Wade. Did the Shapiros get it done? Did the Bushes get it done? Did the McCains get it done? The Ericksons get it done? The Erickson Consulting Class and Company? The Fox Newses, did they get it done? No. Romney, can I keep going? They did not get it done. 4 decades of societal and civil strife over an issue that was forced onto the American public. 4 decades of fighting, 4 decades of promises, and yet it took the billionaire from New York City. That's why. It's human nature. People want to follow somebody they believe in because they can say they can believe in them. They can feel safe enough to believe in them because they believe in themselves and they believe in the people who follow them. And they are dedicated to those causes. Glenn Youngkin, his approval rating is 54%. In a state, Biden won by 12 points, 10 points. In a state that has been trending Democratic since 2004. How is Glenn Youngkin so popular? Because he told the people of Virginia what he was going to do. We were just talking about this in the beginning of the show, and he stuck with it. They may not agree with him on everything, but they know they can trust him to do what he says he will do. Nobody wants to follow a coward like Mitch McConnell, who changes his mind every 2 seconds, depending on the way the wind blows, what was written in Politico that day, what came out in the Washington Post, the fix. Americans don't give a crap what they're blogging about at the Washington Post. They're not leaders. They're selfish, essentially bureaucrats who have just been elected. Speaking of fake elections, this next paragraph is very important. As for the election of an RNC chair, the way the process works is that a candidate must receive a majority vote of the 168 members of the RNC. This consists of a chair, committeeman, and committeewoman from each of the 50 states and 6 territories. This is why I have been taking the time to speak with these members to gauge their desire to change and improve the RNC. If you guys remember the comment we read from Harmeet Dillon the other day on the show, just listen and remember the similarities as we do this. The grassroots is frustrated, deflated, and defeated. They're tired of coming up short, like what happened again just yesterday. It is time for our party to retool, transform, and win back the presidency in 2024, expand our number of Republican-held seats in Congress, and win the maximum number of down-ballot races across the country. However, by design, there are massive barriers to avoid a change in leadership. Republican voters already believe that Washington, D.C. is an irredeemable swamp. They will be proven right yet again if Chairwoman McDaniel moves forward with running for a 4th term, despite her prior pledge not to do so. Oh, by the way, we forgot to even discuss that. She said she would not. She pledged that she would not. It appears to me that her re-election with a majority vote from the 168 RNC members would then be predetermined. And I'm going to explain what he means by this. He's been making calls, just like Harmeet Dillon has been making calls. And I'm going to tell you what those calls consist of in a second. The better path forward would be for Chairwoman McDaniel to listen to and respect the wishes of the actual grassroots voters of our party and allow the RNC to forge ahead with new leadership. Her greatest service to the Republican Party at this time would be to make room for a new chair. So he's been calling all over the place, and I'm going to tell you where this is coming from. He's been calling all over the place, and he's been hearing what Harmeet Dillon has been hearing. Yes, I want change. It's time for change. But she's already bribed this person. She's already promised that person. She's already bullied this person. They've already removed people that they suspected could be disloyal if these elections did not go the way that we anticipated they would go or had hoped they would go. So I don't want to be the next one in line to lose this seat, this assignment, this post, this position, this future position because of her vengeance. She has turned herself into a little Mitt Romney and a little Mitch McConnell. In fact, wields more power on some level. Definitely more than Mitt Romney. Mitch McConnell, that's to be debated. This is textbook machine politics. If you read, and I'm not sure we have this, but I'll look for it in a second here. Harmeet Dillon's statement the other day was right on the money. She actually was trying to explain to people what she has been hearing through her calls with different people. Which is basically like they all do want change. They all think that it's time for Ronna to go. But the problem is that they basically have been either bribed or bullied into voting for her. And even if they haven't, they're afraid of others who have. Let's see. Let me see if I can find this because I absolutely think this is a must to read. Again, if some of you missed it the other day. Yeah, it's a machine. Where are you? Where are you? Come on. Aha, here we go. A lot of RNC members I'm calling, and actually, let's put this on the screen. Put it up. This is a must see. Okay. A lot of RNC members I'm calling fully support change. Some are worried the current leadership will retaliate against their state by withholding funds, committee assignments, or other benefits if they openly oppose a historic first term. This is based on prior experience, and it is. Absolutely. The next one. Current leadership has even recruited reluctant challengers into leadership races for officer positions because the popular candidates won't, quote, play ball. That's just politics, Harmeet. That's how it's always been, Harmeet. The machine cares for its own, Harmeet. Maybe we need change to do things differently in order to, win elections. And there's David. Look, that's how the GOP establishment operates. It's like the mob. They threaten people to keep them in line. That's why nothing ever changes. It is very much like a mob. And by the way, I didn't disappear behind paywalls. As a matter of fact, I'm not a banner, but you're out of here. But before I do, I'm gonna respond to you so you can hear it. I didn't disappear behind paywalls. Graphics cost at least $20,000 to build. You know, $5 to ask for a $5 video. If that's too much for you, then take a hike. Goodbye. Disappear behind paywalls. After an election, can I change I didn't have a single light bulb working in my own garage. My own closet in my home, because I'm never there, didn't even have a functioning light bulb in it. I had so many things that I neglected before the election that guess what? I needed to take a little bit of time to do that. I don't have maids. I'm not like a Hannity pundit, okay? I had to take care of my own things. I mow my own lawn. I cut my own grass. I vacuum my own pool. I vacuum my own carpet. I dust my own house. I do my own laundry. I do my own dishes. I drive my kids to the bus stop. I help them with their homework. I take them to competitive dancing. I take them to their band and instrument lessons. I don't have people who do stuff for me. I am over these idiots. That last poll we ran for nothing in the state of Ohio costs $14,000. $14,000 to give you a Vance plus 7 for nothing. I am over these people. Get a job. Holy crap. And Joel, Laura's job is to hold it all together. I can't even deal, honest to God, folks, my brain is so filled with numbers and it gets crazy during an election that I can't even remember my own schedule. Laura handles my own schedule. She books things. And yes, she does a lot of basically, not honestly, she does. Like I help, I absolutely help, but I'm gone a lot. So she does like 90% of the house stuff. But even when it comes to what I do, the business end of this, she schedules client calls. She'll say so-and-so needs 30 minutes to ask you something. I am lost in the sauce and can't even figure out my own calendar. A couple weeks before the election, it's ridiculous. Like I have to walk Laura around. Like, Laura, what do I got? What do I got? Because the numbers are all I can consume at that point, you know? But at any point, this is a perfect example of what candidates kind of face in this whole MAGA versus the establishment thing, right? Then, let's say if Harmeet Dillon were to win. They would sabotage the hell out of her behind her back. And let's say it worked. Then in 2024, they could later say, oh, you know what? See, we should have stayed with Ronna. Ronna would have won the presidency. This is what you're dealing with. It's like the kid who constantly wants, oh, that was a foul tip. That was a foul tip. I want a forced strike. And if you don't give me a forced strike, I'm going to make sure that we can't even play a game. Because I'm going to take the bat, I'm going to take the ball, maybe the ball's mine, I'm going to take maybe the bat's mine, so I'm going to take the only bat we have, and I'm going to go home. And then there won't be a baseball game at all. And then when you're all bored and not able to play a game, I'm going to say, see, I told you so, you should have given me the forced strike. That is what they are doing. It's not true, aliens. Let's look at some of it, right? So you had candidates like Luna in Florida 13, who romped it in the Tampa Bay area when two establishment candidates failed to flip that seat in both 18 and 20, when they absolutely could have won against Charlie Crist in 2020, but they believe their own garbage polling, who they still use to this day. They believe their own polling that showed that the Republican candidate was more than, I think it was 9.5 points behind Charlie Crist. And at the end of the day, they lost by about, I think it was 3 points, something like that, 5 points maybe, but very, very close. So you have an America First Latino come along and she flips the district. You have Vega, handpicked by McCarthy himself. Fang, who was handpicked by McCarthy himself. See, they thought they were going to be able to make up for sabotaging MAGA in places like Ohio's 9th District, J.R. Majewski, right? They thought they would be able to sabotage people like J.R. Majewski and John Gibbs. Maybe they didn't need Gibbs. They're still pissed. They took out Meyer, right? Meyer, excuse me. They would be able to add that with like Rhode Island 2. They'd offset it with Connecticut 5. They'd also get Virginia 7, Virginia 2, maybe even Virginia 10. But they didn't. In Nevada is a perfect example. Out of the 3 districts in Nevada, 1 was a Trump-aligned candidate. They all lost. McCarthy's candidates lost, and the 1 Trump candidate lost. It's not true. It's simply not. And California, you can take off the board, because the only reason that some of those candidates have won, and one probably, he's won. The only reason why they were able to hang on, the David Valadezos. Mike Garcia is certainly not an establishment hack. He is not. So I'm not even putting him in that category. And by the way, Garcia's got a harder district than Valadeo does. But the only reason why Valadeo hung on, the only reason why John Duarte barely eked it out over Adam Gray, when David, by the way, a friend of the show, he would have won by 4 to 6 points. The only reason why is because Latinos didn't show. The districts, or the precincts, I would say, that like David won in 13 and Merced, that are highly Hispanic, that he spent time beating down the doors on, walking in the ghetto, literally the ghettos, like some Hispanic ghettos, they just didn't vote. The electorate was 70 plus, a little over 7, like it may have ticked down a little bit with some of the late votes that came in. But last I looked in California, it was extremely white. Almost like a national electorate. Hispanics were just disgruntled with the Democratic Party, so they didn't vote for them. But they didn't vote against them either, because Republicans did not put up Hispanic-friendly candidates like MAGA Republicans did, by the way, in Arizona and in Nevada, which is why they did so much better with them. They didn't put them up like they did in Florida, which is why they did so much better with them. Even in Georgia, Walker won the Hispanic vote in Georgia. It's just that it's only 4% of the electorate. It's not a lot. Walker's problem is the white educated voter and professional class voter in the Atlanta metro area. Folks, did David Perdue do any better with them? Then did the wife of the New York Stock Exchange chairman do any better with them? Nope and nope. And in fact, Donald Trump outperformed David Perdue in the Atlanta metro area. So, I mean, this is a good, and look, I expect, and this is why I wanted to talk so much about this today. I expect the leadership at the RNC to do this. I expect the leadership at the NRCC to do it, the NRSC to do it. I didn't expect so many of these so-called social media influencers and so-called Republican activists to be duped this easy. Like, you're really getting rolled. And boy, you're being rolled easily. You're rolling over for them. You're not even being rolled because you're rolling over for them. Like, they put the bone in the air, the little milk bone, and you just got on your back and went, hey. Honestly, like, you've learned nothing in 6 years. Nothing. It's really rather amazing. But it's why in the future, we're going to talk more about what motivates people to believe things, right? So in between times, and by the way, there is a new public polling project up. I want to start a Republican nomination tracker. So very happy with our national polling this year. Very happy. We led everybody in the trends, and we damn near nailed it at the end of the day, even with demographics. By the way, how badly did I get beat up over the post-grad demographic? Oh, there's no way Republicans are going to crack 38% of the post-grad vote. In fact, we had them at what, 40? Where are they now? 40. Their problem was that they didn't get enough working class voters out. This is a major problem for Republicans. Major problem. I honestly don't know what they're going to do about it because they're in this identity crisis. But I would love to discuss more about why people believe things, what persuades them to believe it, and then despite so much evidence to the contrary, why they continue to believe something that we know is not true. Right? Or even that, and by the way, this goes right up there with the so-called educated voter. And in fact, they're the worst to display this behavior because they are more inclined to refuse to believe that they've been duped. And it's easier to believe the lie. Right? Yeah, and aliens, good question. Why did all the Georgia Republicans do so much better than Herschel Walker? It really depends on where you're talking about. But it's all DeKalb and Fulton County. It's all of it. And, I know a lot of people say, does anybody really think Brad Raffensperger got 100,000 votes more than Walker? It all came from the Atlanta metro area. All of those votes, go look. It's not hard to look. All of those votes that are missing from Walker came from the Atlanta metro area. Fulton County, Walker got 102,000 votes. What are you doing, babe?
I hear those naughty words coming out of
Oh,
here.
come on. I wasn't that bad. Come on, what'd I say?
Heard you yelling. I know you got spicy.
No
Just 'cause
way.
I'm distracted doesn't mean I can't.
I didn't get, oh God, that actually is so good. That air coming in, can you leave that? I'm serious. Is it quiet enough to leave open? Because boy, oh boy, that's nice. That's really nice. Amen to that. So yeah, in Fulton County alone, alien, Brad Raffensperger, amen to that. Brad Raffensperger got almost 40,000 votes more than Walker. All right. So, and I'm not talking about because of the margin. I mean, there are just more votes in that county who voted overall. I know, it's crazy undervote. And we saw this in a lot of places as well. And there are places that a lot of people have strongly suspected that there is, we're on the tube. But you know what I'm saying. All right. Georgia is one of the least. Arizona is probably one of the biggest messes. Pennsylvania is just not at all credible. It's not. I mean, come on. I'm not playing this game. If you have an issue with that, take it up with the FBI, who issued like a 12-count indictment right before the 2020 election on something that had been going on for 10 years. So don't take that up with me. Everybody knows it. And in fact, if you don't believe it, then you're the only fool outside of Philadelphia who doesn't believe it. All right? Yeah. So, and again, that's exactly what I'm talking about. When I'm talking about, I want to talk about more in the future about what makes people believe stuff. All right. Yeah. Think about this, Lordy. What were they, the lengths that perhaps they were willing to go to? What if Kerry Lake and Abe Hamadeh, Attorney General has the power to prosecute. The governor has the power to instruct prosecution and instruct investigations. What if they were allowed to have won that election? What if? Right. They, at that point, people will say, oh, how far are government officials willing to go to hold on to power? Are you kidding? That's an incentive in and of itself. But when what may actually be in the frying pan because of something somebody else finds out, then you're willing to do just about anything, aren't you? In fact, I'd like to show you guys something. And let's see if I can do this before. I know I got to take a quick break soon, but it didn't come through. I really want, come on, tell me it's going to come through. Maybe it hasn't synced yet. For some reason, I don't know what's going on, but my computer usually syncs with all my messages, and it's just not there. It's not syncing for some reason. It's not as Anyway, oh, you know how I can show it to you? I can go to my locals because I put it up from my locals. So I can do that and then I can share it through there. Hold on. Because I'd like to show you this. And a lot of people were asking me, well, let me show it to you first and then we'll talk about what it says and what it doesn't say. All right. Okay, here we go. Boom. This is a map that was hanging on the wall in the Maricopa County Tabulation and Counting Center. Okay? I know it's hard to see, but what you're looking at there is a map of Maricopa County where, and the title of it, and let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. I just don't want to zoom in on everything. And that's not really helping all that much. No, it's not. Okay. The title of it on the bottom, I guess you'll just have to take my word for it. The title is General Election 2020 in person, in bold letters, Republican voter density. Okay? And election day and early vote sites / metropolitan Maricopa County. You may take notice of the big, deep red blob that is in the northern part of Maricopa County. Large swaths of that would be what is now known as the new first congressional district. That is represented, that is represented by David Schweikert, who wound up winning barely because of what happened in Maricopa County on election day. All right. And actually, afterwards, I can show you that. I can show you a map of that. But it was not believed at all to really be that competitive of a race. And David Schweikert barely won it. And when I say barely, he won it by like 3,200 votes, just under 3,200 votes cast out of almost 300,000. All right. That is where, according to the people that we spoke with, 30% of them roughly, of all the people who said they had problems in Maricopa, not only came from that district, but came from the most heavily Republican areas of that district. Now, drag your attention to the southeastern part of Maricopa County, if you would, where you will see the other very, very, very big dot, okay? There are parts of that area, okay, where we have 3 districts that are encompassed in that big blob. What is now known as the 5th Congressional District, represented by Andy Biggs. What is now known as part of the 2nd Congressional District, which is Eli Crane. He won it. He won it 53.9 to 46.1. Andy Biggs was actually closer than expected, 56.7 to 37.4. There was an independent, Clint Smith, who got about 6% of the vote. And a very, very close race that encompasses a chunk of what you see there in that red density in Maricopa, and then Pima County, Santa Cruz, parts of Santa Cruz, and Democratic areas. And that was Juan Siscomani. That was a flip. In the areas where there are blue counties and blue precincts, there were no malfunctions, tabulation errors, printer errors, nothing. In those areas of what is now known as the 6th Congressional District, which was represented by a Democrat, and Juan Siscomani was able to take. Barely. But you will notice that in Maricopa parts that encompass the 6th Congressional District, there were major issues. In the 8th, represented by Andy Biggs, was the second large chunk of voters, the location of voters who told us they had major problems. And you might not be surprised to hear that where there are the most concentrated Republican areas, there were larger problems. Why? And for those people who say, oh, I think the Democratic map is right to the right, it's not. That's not a map of Democratic voting in Maricopa County. If I remember correctly, that was a map of like locations, early drop locations, and where there was, some of those drop boxes from 2020. If I remember correctly, that's what it was. But no, there was no Democrat election day map. And even if there was, it really wouldn't matter. Because why would a county allocate resources to learn something like this? And do you really just think that it's a coinky-dink? That the problems were concentrated in those areas? If so, I got a bridge to sell you, folks. I have a bridge to sell you. That is crazy. Secondly, as somebody who does things like this for a living and plots this stuff, do you have any idea how much money that costs? If I went to Data Wrapper right now, or IMAPS, even more appropriate to say, if I went to IMAPS right now and said, I have a row of 380,000, I have a data set that's 380,000 rows deep. You know how much it's going to cost me to plot that and then print out that map on that format in that big area? Forget about having to go to Ginkgo's or whatever the hell. What's the name of that place where you go and get those big things? Kinko's. Forget about going there, printing that out. Why would you justify that expenditure if you're MC Tech? Right. There's only one reason why you do it. Let's be honest. But you're willing to go to great lengths to save yourself. To save yourself. You understand what I mean by that? There is no Secretary of Election that I called in Florida, North Carolina. We have different, we call them Secretary of Elections in Georgia and in Florida. Georgia kind of took that, model. But in North Carolina, I called around just to see if anybody had something like this sitting in their tabulation centers. The answer was no. Couldn't justify the cost for something like that. Plus, it's not relevant to what we do here, as the Carteret County people told me. We count votes. We don't predict where they come from. So, if you really believe that this is an accident, again, I definitely have a bridge that I need to sell you. Please invest in my Verrazano bridge. All right, let's take a real quick word from sponsor before we close this puppy out, okay? And as usual, I'm looking at some of your comments of the rate this is going. DeSantis may be better off as a governor. I think it's a no-brainer. If I was Donald Trump, I would not fight with Ron DeSantis. I would ask him to be my VP. Let's announce it now, and let's steamroll the competition together. That's what I would do. A food shortage could be coming even in the U.S., absolutely. Experts were writing this as recently as July. What will they be writing now? Drought, inflation, even new policies continue to push America's food supply to its breaking point. That's why survival food is more important than ever. Do what Laura and I have done for our family and create your own stockpile of the best-selling 4 Patriots survival food kits. It's not ordinary food. We're talking about good for 25-year super survival food. Hand-packed right in a family-owned facility in the US of A. You have different delicious breakfasts, lunches, dinners. You can make these meals in less than 20 minutes. Just add boiling water, simmer, and serve. Go to 4patriots.com/TPP to get your 3-month survival kit. You'll get their famous guarantee for an entire year as well after your order, plus 10 free gifts and free shipping. And when I say 10 free gifts, I don't mean it's like the useless crap people send you. Oh, you'll also get 5 free gifts, and they're useless garbage. They're not. Like, I got a lighter, I got a water boiling thing, I got a pot. It was awesome. They're called 4 Patriots because a portion of every sale is donated to charities who support our veterans and their families. Just go to 4patriots.com/TPP to build your own stockpile today. While you're surfing, if you're surfing, their awesome website with all the other great gifts that they have. If you want to check out, for instance, like their 72-hour survival food kit, and check out their macaroni and cheese. That's what's in there, and some of the rice stuff, delicious. Don't forget to use promo code TPP10. By the way, somebody used it to get the generator system. Well done. I got the photo. Well done. Don't forget TPP10 to take 10% off your site-wide order. All right. TPP likes gold. TPP like you silver too. And so do the folks at GOLDCO, because if you call and get this offer, they're going to tell you just that. All right. Look, the last time the economy looked like this, right before it wound up collapsing. And while it did, and inflation ran through the roof, gold shot up to 1,300%. Gold, silver, 2,400%. Still has growth potential, in my opinion. Platinum as well. So if history repeats itself, we could see this happening again. And you can't afford to miss out on what could be the biggest precious metal boom of our generation. That's why I want you to visit tpplikesgold.com, because when you do, you'll not only get the chance to protect your retirement savings with gold and silver, you could get $10,000 or more in free silver just for doing it. This is a rare opportunity, so don't miss out on it, and you protect your retirement savings. Visit tpplikesgold.com, tpplikesgold.com. And I'll tell you, like I said before, TPP like silver. And I forgot what the offer was that I got. I got like, I'll be honest with you. I got like almost like 5% extra ounces. I'm serious. It was good. Depends on what you spend, of course. But it's like 5% extra. It's really amazing. Just make sure you're prepared to receive precious metals. If you're diversifying with precious metals, I want to make sure you guys understand. You can. I know I don't want to say his name because I'm opening him up to some, but I knew somebody who was so stupid. I remember when he built a house in Maryland, because he's a defense contractor, and I was helping him move. I went to his attic and I found, like, I'm picking up boxes, and I found this black duffel bag and shiny crap, just hanging, stuff's poking out of the top of it. I'm like, what is it? I grab it, I pick it up, it's heavy as can be. I look in, and this man literally has bars and coins too, but just bars hanging out of a duffel bag. It must have been $200,000 in precious metals sitting in a duffel bag in his attic. I'm like, what are you doing? If somebody finds out about this, somebody's coming in here to get it. I do not think that is a smart way. You got to do some little bit of research to figure out, what you got to do. That's a great question. Could Scott Walker beat Tammy Baldwin in 2024? Yup. I think so. The map is very favorable to Republicans. The Senate map is very, very favorable to Republicans in 2024. Extremely favorable. So it's actually a much more favorable map than the one was this year. So that's why a change in leadership is a discussion that the party needs to be having right now. You can't continue to go through this identity crisis. You just can't. And just so people understand, nobody is going to care that a bunch of liberal jurors in a liberal state found the Trump organization guilty of fraud on all counts. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. All right. Well, that's not true. Liberals care, but nobody else is going to care. Especially if we get to this point in 2024, if you really look at JP Morgan Chase, Morgan Stanley, what else I was looking at the other day, I believe it was Wells Fargo. Some of the forecast changes for the economy, folks, it is not looking good. It is not looking good. And we could be in the middle of a primary season, heading into the nomination of a presidential candidate on both sides, and in the middle of a very deep recession. And that is I would say that's one advantage Donald Trump has, and I can't wait to get out. And if you go to bigdatapoll.com, the link for the public polling project is in every video description right now, whether you're watching on Getter, YouTube, or Rumble. But by the way, we're going to reveal new graphics. I was thinking I may want to change the name of the public polling project because people keep calling it PPP, which is getting confused with public policy polling. So I've been doing some thinking, but we got working on some really great, I don't know what the word is, original graphics for it. And we just need, the concepts are there. But anyway, you don't have to go to the link to it. It's easier now. Just go to bigdatapoll.com and you could, I believe it's right on the front page now. You could, but we want to start the nomination polling. But I will say this, as long as he stays, in the right lane, he would have, and he meaning the former president, if we're in a recession by the time we get to 2024, he would have really a much better argument to make than anybody else, which is just like the I told you so argument. We went over this a little bit on Monday. I told you this would happen. I told you the economy was doing better I have done it before. I can do it again. Rich, who do you think the Kemp Warnock voter voted for in 2020? There was a lot of people who would have been like Biden voters, and that's the difference now. I mean, look, in the poll that we had Walker up by 2. Let me see if I have time to bring up some of this, guys. Go into my database on MarketSite, okay? Hold on. I'd like to show you the difference between Trump and some of these candidates, whether it's in Georgia, and that's why I want to start nomination polling, because I also want to get some versus data. I want to see, I want to get a trend where I can see whether or not, yeah, maybe there are some so-called self-identified Republicans who don't like Trump and would vote for DeSantis, but there are these lower propensity independents, even some Democrats, who would never vote for another Republican other than Trump. And I want to start measuring, what, because I think it's very clear that those voters exist and that they're not a given. I think Republicans already should have learned the lesson that you took these people for granted. They did not vote for you in 2020, in 2022, excuse me. They did not come out for you. They came out for Youngkin. They did. But for some reason, something happened between then and 2022. I think a lot of it is the persecution, and the Republican Party did nothing. The persecution of their former leader and themselves, and the Republican Party did nothing. Ukraine and the Republican Party did nothing. These are anti-war voters. A gun vote, a couple of them, and the Republican Party did nothing. And I can't help but to remember all of these people who said, I'm never going to vote for a Republican again because of what they did to Donald Trump. Right after 2020. I can't help but remember that and believe them. All right. Yeah, let's do this. Let's look at Nevada, for instance. And this is it's one of the older polls, but it's the one I have with the president in it. It doesn't matter. It's apples to apples. All right. Here you can see Lombardo, for instance. Barely up, but up. Okay. We nailed that. Well, close. He's not in here. Okay, but before I add him, the generic ballot. Look how close it was. In the end, Democrats efficiently put their vote. It was R+1 at this point, but they were very efficient with their vote, and that was just not enough. Lombardo was up by 2. Democrats were very efficient with their vote. He held on by less than 1, right, or something, or 1. Let's just put Trump all the way at the end, and I'm going to show you the difference here. Oh, wait, I'll put both. Hold on. Sorry, I'm having this issue. Let's do it with leaners. Let's do it without. I'm dragging and dropping. What I'm doing right there is that I just didn't have that variable in there. On the initial ask, Trump leads by 10. 48-38. With leaners, Biden will rise quite a bit. He'll get to 40, but Trump is up by 11. Rasmussen found the same thing. The same thing. They were Trump by, I think, 9 or 10. Let's also go to Georgia. I think that one was for creative destruction media. You'll see some people have there. 13th congressional district right there, by the way. Pennsylvania. It's another great example. Let's look at Pennsylvania. We'll go to Georgia in a second. At that point, for instance, Oz down by what? 4. And Trump up by some ridiculous margin. Hold on. I didn't add it, but I'm going to add it now. Oh, did I not have it here? I could have sworn. Oh, there it is. Trump versus Biden with leaners. So Oz down by 4. Trump up by 7. And this is validate. This is with leaners. What we're basically telling people to do is if they were undecided, we'll ask them, whether or not they lean. This is called a multiple response variable. It says, please add all the people who initially said they would vote for Donald Trump in the initial question, those who said they would initially vote for Joe Biden, and then please add that with those who leaned, and that's the number of valid cases or percentage. And here, Trump 46.6, Biden 40. So here's Oz down by 4 and Trump up by 7. Okay? I've been just trying to show you guys all of the pattern here. Okay? I think it's this one. Well, this is the more recent one. So let's do that. Let's just do the whole poll because I think it's in there. I think they're both in there. And Kemp up by 7, right? Kemp versus Abrams. So here we have Kemp up by 7, right? And Trump up by 11. All right. So you see what I'm saying? I mean, this is all over the place. All over the place. I mean, it's unbelievable. You can see this everywhere. I mean, Republicans trail Trump by a lot. By a lot. Even looking, forget about the likely voters combined, midterm likely voters. Yep. So let's look at, do I have the Trump versus Biden in Arizona in this one? Let's see. Because I'm trying to show you that it wasn't just at the end. This one was from July. Yeah, that's that. But let me see if I have Trump in this one as well. This is the one everyone got mad at me because I didn't ask Trump. It didn't ask about Trump. So let me go back. Maybe it was this one. This one was July. That one was July too. So I guess this one was early October. Yeah, October 2nd. Okay. So, for instance, Republicans were up by 6 on the generic ballot. Let's look at the Senate. How close was the Senate at that point? Kelly up by 1.6. 2024 rematch. Trump up by 6. So, and I remember Arizona was one of the closer ones. But this is it. I mean, this is all over the map. All over the map. Dixon down by this much. Trump up by 3 in Michigan. Or 2 in Michigan. And that's Emerson. In Nevada, they had the same thing. Trump was up by like 9. And Laxalt at that time was barely up by like 1. I don't think they did a rematch in the final poll. So, I mean, this is just the way it is. I mean, so for people who are like, blame Trump. I mean, the fact of the matter is you can do that. But eventually you're going to have to grapple with the fact that Donald Trump does a much better job by the way, J.D. Vance won, and he won pretty handily. But it was Trump by 15. 15 points in the state of Ohio. And Vance up by 7. I don't know what else you need to know. The Emerson poll had Hochul up by 6. Biden was only up by 7 in New York. Or no, Hochul up by 8, but Biden up by 7. It was all over the place, folks. It was all over the place. And I don't know what would make any other Republican different than the Republicans who were running for governor, for Congress, for Senate. Mark Mitchell and I from Rasmussen Reports, we have spoken about this ad nauseum. Do you see this gap between Trump and other Republicans? And it's not a statistically insignificant gap. Are you seeing this? And it's everywhere. Everywhere. There was not a single state where Donald Trump ran behind one of the gubernatorial candidates, the generic congressional candidates, or the Senate candidate. Not one single state that we polled this year. Except for Wisconsin, they were tied, right? Or was it Trump by 4 in Wisconsin? It may have been Trump by 4. Let me see. That would be under the Public Polling Project. Wisconsin was under the Public Polling Project, I remember. Battleground states. Arizona, Nevada, Ohio. Oh, right. There's Ohio right there. Trump by 15, Vance by 7. And again, Vance won. He's just going to have to win over some of those voters that initial Republicans have a difficulty. Oh, this is Pennsylvania. What am I doing here? Come on. What did I say? Look at. It should be It should be under Badger State. Arizona, Nevada, Ohio, Wisconsin. Where is the Badger State here? I might have put it in a wrong folder on accident. Buckeye. There's the Buckeye. Did I put it under national on accident? I clearly put it in the wrong folder. It's in the wrong folder somewhere. Grand Canyon, Nevada. That's weird. Oh, no, wait, right. Wisconsin was for CD Media. Okay, so Biden versus Trump with leaners in Wisconsin. Trump by 3. So just as much as Johnson. And actually, I think that Trump, I think it's very clear, did this to our polling in 2016 and 2020, that we did understate Donald Trump in Wisconsin. We actually thought that Wisconsin, just the way it's more rural than Michigan and Pennsylvania, so it's a little bit more difficult to poll. But it looked like Trump's strength in like Pennsylvania was stronger than in Wisconsin, for instance. And at the end of the day, in both counts, that was not true. All right. So again, it's because it's more rural and he got a bigger vote. So Johnson, he got, if we look at the map for Johnson, which I'll do last. Let's do this last before we move on. Let's go to Senate results. And I'll add runoff to that bar. You know, the bar we had that showed House results, Senate results, all that. I'll add the runoff to that bar on People's Pundit Daily eventually. All right, so here's the Senate elections. Let's go to Wisconsin, for instance. Okay. And you can see here, Ron Johnson did do well in some of these areas that Trump did, like Ashland. Republicans get their butts kicked in Ashland, and it is the heart of the birth of the labor movement. The northwestern counties, Trump gets in the 40s when other Republicans do not. Douglas, Bayfield, Ashland. You can see Ron Johnson did that. He performed at Trump-like levels. The problem is in Dane, he got crushed, but in Milwaukee, he got crushed. And the vote share was a lot more than it typically is in the rest of the state, even though there's no population increases there. Census showed as clear as day. Rock, he did not do as well in. Green, he did not do as well in. Like, there is very clearly some of the Trump vote missing here. Juneau County, he did as well as Trump does, without a doubt. 62.6 in Monroe. Juneau, he did a little bit better than Trump, actually. Wood is another one, a Trump-like kind of county. But then when you get up to Rusk, some of these areas, you start to see closer to Trump numbers. Barron, Price, these are Obama areas that Trump was able to change. Somebody like Ron Johnson did hold on to it. He won Kenosha by about 4. It's a little less than Trump wins. Trump usually wins it by about 4 or 5 points. It's a little bit less, but it's still decent. Racine, Paul Ryan's backyard, for instance. Waukesha, he did great in. It really, this closeness of this race came from 2 counties. It really did. And in Brown, where Green Bay is, Ron Johnson put up a real good fight and put up some nice numbers there. Eau Claire, he kept it kind of close. Trumpelo, I mean, he won not as well as Trump, but Eau Claire, he kept closer. So, you know, it really is 2 counties, Dane and Milwaukee, where it's not even that the margin was all that bad. It's just that there was all these mail ballot drops, 30,000 more, 40,000 more, 15,000 more, that made him closer, made Barnes get closer because they were so lopsided in favor of Mandela Barnes. All right, so yeah, I mean, that's really what it comes down to. You know, Wisconsin would be the easier state for Trump to win, even though he's polling. I just suspect, like, we have a Trump +3, but, you know, Pennsylvania looks like I just can see Pennsylvania being a little bit harder again. It was 2 times around, and, you know, it looked like it in 2020, and at the end of the day, it wasn't. All right, started a little late, so wanted to end a little late. Don't miss it on Friday, of course, noon Eastern Standard Time, Inside the Numbers. Word from our great sponsors, as always. We made up the book club last night, right before Georgia. Don't forget, Sunday Locals members, if you're members of the Locals community, we have moved on to John Mearsheimer. tragedy of great power politics. That's Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Loads of fantastic information and great discussion, especially coming out of Schneider. We did that well, and I'm picking which one where we're going to go to after this one. But absolutely, if you are a member of Locals and you want to participate in the book club, you don't need the book. It helps to have it, but we read aloud and have discussion. You're missing out. All right, we got many more local supporters than we do people who attend the book club. And I know it's difficult to make a Sunday at 3 p.m. And a lot of you watch the recording, which, by the way, from yesterday will be up shortly. But just don't forget, all right, to try to make it, because it really is a lot of great information. All right, as usual, folks, thank you so much for joining, and we will see you at noon Eastern Standard Time tomorrow on Inside the Numbers.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends, and spread a little love just for a little fun. I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but you don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette.